So it's getting to be around that time. Your first build's getting a little bit stale and you're thinking, well, maybe it's time to start up another character, and the character that I've got don't really like the ascendancies. I'm gonna try something new. But you're gonna have to slog through the campaign and deal with all of that headache, and GGG still hasn't implemented any kind of alternative campaign stuff because they say, oh, PoE2 campaign will be amazing. That's why we're just going to completely abandon the first campaign for multiple years. It is what it is. I'll get off of my high horse and we will talk about how to level significantly faster on your second, third, or any other character after that. There is a wide variety of things that can make this experience substantially faster, substantially easier, and there might be some basic tips and tricks that I can give you that you may just not even realize that you're not doing that will make your time substantially faster. I think that most people with a little bit of effort on a second/geared character for leveling can probably get through the campaign in 5 hours or less. And I'm going to show you how to do all of that and more in this video. Now remember, boys, if you're enjoying the content or these videos end up helping you out, make sure to give them a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest content. And without further ado, let's get into it. So now, I am going to assume a couple of things if you're watching this video. If you are an absolutely brand new player, you might be able to get some tips and tricks from this video that might help you out, but if you are really brand new, I don't suggest that you watch this video because I feel that the best way that you can initially experience this game is by actually trying to experience it. What I would say that you need to do is go grab a build guide and try to follow the skills and such that it tells you to use, the passive tree that it tells you to use, and just kind of move your way through the game, figuring things out, searching and looking for things. And then if you have questions, you can go and look up those questions and find answers for them. There's a really big problem these days of min-maxing the fun out of PoE, and you will learn and experience the game a lot better as a new player if you kind of just play the game. Now, for everyone else who is wanting to level substantially faster on a second, third, fourth, however many characters ahead that you are, we're gonna go over quite a few things in this video. The first one is going to be your actual way that you need to be thinking about while playing the game and leveling a character. One thing that almost everyone who has a slow campaign time gets wrong is they simply make the cardinal sin of not moving enough. One of the worst things that you can possibly do if you're trying to maintain speed and trying to get through the campaign faster is just sit in town, think about stuff, trying to like look for crazy gear that you maybe want to swap out or do this or that or think about things or whatever. Just start moving. Just go, run. Think about the things that you need to do while you're moving your character through the zones. You should just be going out into the zone and you're thinking, okay, so I'm coming up on like level whatever, I need to be swapping to that piece of gear. Do all of that thinking while you're out in the zone, running around, moving around. Don't stand in town. Don't sit there and interact with the NPCs and look at all the gems and think, oh, maybe I should use this, maybe I should use this. Forget all of that. Take care of all of that before you even begin. If you're on your second character in your hideout, you should have access to every single gem that you need at any given time. Lily Roth is now in our hideout and you can purchase whatever gems you want from her, every single one at level 2. As soon as you hit town, as soon as you're able to go to your hideout, you can purchase any gem that you need. So you don't need to worry about that. I would buy all of them right at the beginning and get everything all set up before you even leave town for the first time. Speaking of that, let's talk about a few things that I think that you should do before you even begin to leave town. Before you even worry about that. You've probably already chosen the build that you're going to do. Make sure that you get the path of building up, make sure that you get all of the information that you need for that build up, and you know basically where you're headed towards, where you're going on the passive tree. Maybe put it up on another monitor or on like your phone or something, like whatever you can to get it somewhere else. And then what I would say that you would want to do is that if you're playing a second character, I do recommend that you get a set of leveling gear. Invest a little bit of money in just getting a good set of leveling gear that you can use for a wide variety of characters, so that you don't need to keep worrying about doing this and worry about doing that and getting all these different pieces of gear. Just gather some basic leveling gear that'll work for pretty much any character. Let's go over some of the basics of leveling gear. The bread and butter of pretty much any set of leveling gear is going to be a tabula rasa. Now, I suggest that you have a few different tabulas in your stash if you're wanting to be most effective for leveling characters. Now, just a basic tabula that anybody can use. If you're level 1, level 2, you can pop on this tabula. However, I do suggest that you get a second tabula or maybe a few of these that have +2 to level of certain kinds of gems. The 3 that I would recommend that you get that should cover pretty much all leveling abilities is going to be projectile, AoE, and then also also duration. Those three should cover the vast majority of leveling abilities. You can get other ones if you really want to, but those three should cover pretty much anything that you're trying to do. So I suggest that you just grab those tabulas. They shouldn't be too expensive. If you're playing a second or third character, you should have probably generated enough currency to be able to do this. Grab at least a basic tabula. You don't need the +2 one, but they are pretty helpful, especially if you're leveling a caster. Second big thing is going to be a helmet. Goldworm is very good early on. Get one with as much resistance as you can. I just found this one. It's only 30 out of 40, but if you can get a 40% resist one, they're not very expensive at all. I do recommend it. Now, there are a couple other helmets you can swap into. However, the Gull is one of the nice ones. It does make it so you create lesser shrines, and it's going to give you extra effect of those shrines. You can get some pretty cool shrines where you're leveling up and moving around. Gives you some resistances, gives you some life. An alternative to the Gull, if you really don't want to use this for some reason, is you could use something like Skullhead that does give you still elemental resistances in general, as well as life. Maybe if you're playing a minion build, you can do something like that. When it comes to gloves, I tend to stay with Loctonial Caress all the way through the game and only swap out of these when I'm basically hitting maps. These are just going to give you attack and cast speed, which is super nice, and it's going to give you a chance to gain charges on kill, which should maintain pretty much full charges throughout the campaign as you're just randomly going around and killing stuff. Loctonial Caress is good from start all the way to finish. And then what I would say, if you're not going to purchase anything else besides a tabula, the one piece of gear that is more important than pretty much anything is going to be a pair of 7 League steps. These aren't that expensive anymore. They're probably like 30 to 40 chaos at most around this time of league, or around about a week into the league. And if you remember what I said earlier, the absolute most important thing that you can possibly do is move, and moving faster is a massive bonus. Now, speaking of moving faster, there are going to be a couple of the things that you can get, but this is the main pair of boots, the main item that you want to invest in. If you can't get any of the rest of the stuff, just grab these pair of boots. Now let's talk about belts. Belts are kind of a little bit weird because it really depends on what build that you're going, but there are a few that are pretty useful. I tend to have a Mega Nords as well as a Magnate sitting around because these are just kind of like generically useful for a lot of builds. Strength is typically pretty rough on caster builds early on, and flash charges are always great. And if you're doing an attack-based build, strength, elemental resistances, flash charge, global fizz damage is all really good. And then you can also use a variety of different String of Servitudes. Now, String of Servitude, the two that I would recommend is either going to be the one that gives you movement speed during a flask effect, or the one that gives you all resistances. Those two are pretty solid. The one that gives you all resistances, I think you can use at a very low level if you want to. Before that, just toss on like a rustic sash or a leather belt or anything else. And talking about rings, you can start out with Piranha Signets. This is going to give you some mana regeneration, as well as a tiny little bit of increased experience and some intelligence for, I guess, some reason it doesn't really matter for intelligence, but you can move on to a wide variety of different rings. There are a bunch of level 0 rings that you can get, like the Combs ring and the Doji's ring. Any of those are fine. Piranha Signets probably help the most with just generic mana costs very, very early on, like levels 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then this league, there is a new set of rings that you can use that's pretty interesting, which is going to be Call of the Void and Winterweave. Now, I would probably not suggest that you use Call of the Void until you get to the point where you can put on Winterweave, but it's an interesting idea that anytime that you're going to get hit here, you might be able to get Reverse Chill, which is going to give you like a bunch of movement speed, attack speed, and all that kind of stuff, so that should be pretty solid. You can do that as soon as you're level 24. Anytime that you're getting hit, you are able to be chilled from pretty much anything, and it will make you move faster. Now, alternatively, if you don't want to use this combo or it doesn't really work for you, you can do Le Hoops of All. You can get 2 of these, would be really, really solid for damage, attributes, elemental resistances. These will carry you all the way through the game very easily. If you are specifically an attack-based character, Thief's Torment is by far the best ring that you can go. I would probably end up using this a lot of the time, even over Call of the Void and Winterweave. I have to do more testing on this, but we'll see. This is what I would say is probably the attack build, and this is melee, this is ranged attack, doesn't matter what it is. This is the one that I'd probably suggest that you use. You can also use a Death Rush if you want to use another ring. You could use like a Death Rush and a Le Hoop of All if you didn't need the Thief's Torment. And last but not least, I don't recommend it as much anymore, but you can use Praxis rings, which reduce the cost of your abilities. However, I'm just going to say for the most part, just use your life to cast your abilities these days. Life tap is pretty good. Talking about an amulet, you can use Crew Reward. You can use the replica Crew Reward if you can't use projectiles and you're looking for AoE. The movement speed is the big thing here. The dexterity and the strength is also super useful. And then if you allocate Wisdom of the Glade, this gives you 30 strength, 30 dexterity, 30 intelligence, and you could swap into like an Astramantis if you want to later, but I tend to stick with Crew Reward for quite some time. When it comes to flasks, you just want to make sure that you have a couple Quicksilver flasks. You can use Bismuth, you can use Silver and Quartz flask and all those other things if you want to. You can roll them as you level up, but just make sure that you have a couple Quicksilver flasks on you. Those are the main ones that are important early on. Now, one thing to remember about jewels specifically is that you can use jewels at pretty much any level. If there's a particular jewel that's really good for your build, like I'm going to be leveling a Steel Champ here, and I will actually be live leveling this this sometime, maybe even today if you're watching this video, I'm not 100% certain, but over at twitch.tv/bigducks, which you should go follow, by the way, if you want to see some leveling action, if you want to get an idea of what it's like to level a little bit faster. You can come and catch me over there if you're interested in that. So for the Steel Champ, the Lord of Steel Jewel is really powerful because it makes Call of Steel use very fast, and it also increases damage. However, I've also got this Impossible Escape, which puts Radius of Impaler skills available to you. Gets you a whole bunch of really cool stuff. The Impaler is here. You can get like, what is it? Like these stats if you really want to. You can get Merciless Skewering, Rampart, Bastion Breaker, a whole bunch of cool stuff with this one here. So if you've got like maybe an Impossible Escape or even some of the other like higher tier jewels like Watcher's Eyes and things like that, like a Vitality life gain on hit, Watcher's Eye is really, really powerful for leveling. All kinds of things are open to you in that regard. Now, when it comes to weapons and such, I'm going to show you some recipes that you can use to craft early game weapons. There are a variety of unique weapons that work for different builds, but that is very build specific. I would say that if you're playing a attack-based build, probably just crafting or finding weapons is what's going to be best. If you're playing a caster build, you can use the wand crafting recipe that I'm going to tell you about, or you can use the Axiom Perpetuum scepters. Those just give you a bunch of added damage and crit. They're really strong early on. Or any other weapon that works for your build, like Quill Rain if you're playing some kind of like bow-based build, so on and so forth. Now, speaking of those recipes, let's talk about them a little bit. There are two particular recipes that are very important, especially while leveling. The first one that we're going to talk about is going to be the wand recipe. Now, there is an alternative wand recipe, but this isn't something that you'll be able to do super easy early on. That is going to be like a quality gem with the kind of plus the spell gems that you're looking for. Don't worry too much about that. That's more so of like a later game thing. Initially, what you're mainly going to be looking for is you're going to be looking for this recipe that gives you added damage to spells. So if we go to the vendor here, what you'll notice is that I've got a bunch of items here. If you take an iron ring as well as any of the random color rings, it will provide you a resistance ring. Now, if I put all of these into here, we will get both a sapphire, topaz, and ruby ring. Now, these are relatively important for what we're looking to do. Each one of these resistances is going to correlate with a specific kind of added damage that will happen with the wand. And also, the rarity of those items determines how high of a level modifier they are and what level they require. So for example, if we use just a standard white ring, it'll be a lower level mod, a blue ring, and a yellow ring will have higher level mods. If we go to the vendor here, the one thing that you're going to have is these need to be blue wands. So you're going to roll them with whatever, doesn't really matter. Of course, I randomly get a wand that's just going to be better than whatever I'm going to craft here because it's just a cast speed and leveled all cold spells gems, but you know.
Hello.
It's how it works. It never is nice to you, unfortunately. We're also going to need an alteration orb. We'll grab 2 of them just so I can show you a few different ones. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to sell our wand, an orb of alteration, and then a white, blue, or yellow resistance ring. Now, if we sell a white quality one, this is a sapphire one, so it's going to be added cold damage. You'll notice that it is in a tier 8 mod and it requires level 8. If we use a blue ring, meaning a magic quality ring, it is going to be a tier 7 mod and it's going to require level 14. And then if we go up one more to a yellow quality ring, which is a rare ring, it's going to require level 20 and it's going to be a tier 6 mod. So the idea here is that if you want to just slowly upgrade your wands as you level up, you can use one at level 8, one at level 14, and one at level 20 to have some very high added damage to spells wands that should carry you through most of the campaign. Alternatively, you can buy Axiom Perpetuums. Those will work exactly the same as these, and they have a bunch of crit on them, so it should be pretty good. Now, there is another recipe that you can use for weapons. This weapon recipe is for physical damage weapons, and it will carry you through the vast majority of the campaign. You just keep using this on new weapons as you find them. The recipe is going to be any white weapon that you're wanting to use, a blacksmith's whetstone, and then a rustic sash. Now, depending on the quality of the rustic sash, once again, depends on the quality of the modifier that you get. I would say that you always want to use a yellow rustic sash if you can, and this will provide you a percentage fizz mod on the weapon. Now, if you really want to, you can rotate through different weapons and different belts. If you don't like the roll that you get here, you can try redoing it. Another thing that you can do is that when you do get this item, you can hit it with something like an orb of augmentation. See if you get a good mod. If you don't, re-roll it again, so on and so forth. Also, make sure to remember that you can craft like attack speed or added physical damage on these weapons as well while you're leveling. Just be aware of the eye level of the craft because it's going to dictate what level requirement that weapon has. This can carry you through most of the game. What I would say is that just keep using this craft every time that you feel that you need damage. You can swap out with random uniques if there are ones that work for your build, and you can also just find random yellows on the ground that just have really good mods. You can craft a percentage physical damage or craft like an added physical damage to it, so on and so forth. Now, one last thing that I do suggest that you do when it comes to before you even leave town, if you have a POB that has like all the information that you're looking for, it's got like the leveling gems and all that kind of stuff, just grab all of those gems right at the gate. So go to your hideout, talk to Lily, and just buy all of the gems and have them here in your stash so that you don't need to think about it. You don't need to go searching for gems and trying to like rack your brain for what you're supposed to be using. Just grab all of them and start tossing them into your gear as you start leveling up. Do make sure that you are leveling your later skills. Maybe if you use like a leveling ability and you swap into a later game ability, make sure you're leveling it up. That's a pretty big one for things like Righteous Fire and stuff like that. If you don't level your Righteous Fire and you have a lower level Righteous Fire, it's not going to be as good. Now that we've talked about most of the things that are going to be happening in town, most of the things that are going to be happening before you even go, let's talk a little bit more like philosophy-wise and like the ideas of what you should be doing when you move through the campaign. Now, there are a bunch of acts in the campaign. We're going to swap over to my other character here just so I can kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at here. Now, as you move through the acts, the one and most important thing that you're doing is just trying to get through the acts, get them over with, get through the zones, move through them as quickly as you can, get the enemies killed, and move on. Movement is the name of the game. You should be avoiding all of these side quests and all of these side zones at all costs. Don't do any kind of skill point quest that requires you to do a bunch of backtracking. Just skip it and come back to it later. There are a few skill point quests that are good to do just as you're running through because you might as well while you're there anyways. It's just like a short detour. Some ideas of ones like that would be things like in Act 6, trying to go kill Aberranth in the Prisoner's Gate. Things like that where you're already right there, you might as well kill him. It's not really wasting you any time. But if things like, say, in Act 1 where you're going to the Submerged Passage where you have to go all the way over into a side zone and then come back and do all that kind of stuff, it's not worth it early on. I just suggest that you skip it. And when it comes to the lab, I would say that for most builds, doing the lab whenever they are available is typically pretty good. There are some builds where the lab points don't matter that much. You should have all of them unlocked from your previous character, so you shouldn't have to do any of the trials again, so I wouldn't worry about that. Hopefully you did the trials on your first character, right? But the idea here is just movement. Getting through the campaign as quickly as you can, moving through these main zones, avoiding the side zones at all costs. You don't need to do all the side quests. You really don't. If you need to see what passives that you still need to go grab the passive skill points, because I don't suggest that you do all of them, like skip them if they're out of the way early on. You'll have a faster character later that can move quicker, kill enemies quicker, that you can just run back through the list and get them all done. You can type /passives into the chat. You do that and it's going to give you a list of every single one that you've gotten, that you haven't gotten, and you can use this to figure out where you need to do your skill quests. And that is going to be it for the video. So if you spend a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, a little bit of currency investing into your leveling strategy, you will be able to level characters substantially faster. There's no reason for your second, third, fourth character to be taking 10, 15 hours to get through the campaign. Gear them up, get all the stuff together for them, and just push forward. Don't worry about doing the side quests, just keep on moving. That's the main thing that's really going to get you through the campaign faster. Even if you just buy a couple basic pieces of gear and you just run straight the way that you're supposed to go, you can easily get under 8 hours, even under 6 hours, I would say, with like a good pair of boots like the 7 League Step and a Tabula. So hopefully this video helps you out until we hopefully get some alternative leveling methods, give us like Heist, Delve, some kind of mapping alternative for leveling GGG at some point. I just really don't like the first campaign, and I can't wait until PoE 2. It's been years at this point. But either way, if you're enjoying this content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest videos, and stay safe out there in raid class. And I'll see you guys in the next video.